Google map tour of the intersection. This is Hollister Avenue looking south. As you can see, there's limited sight distance. You're supposed to look at sight distance from a distance of 30 to 50 feet out. Obviously, I can't measure that here, but I think we're in that range when we're here. And you're supposed to have stopping distance of visibility is supposed to be 100 feet. So you need to be able to see a car coming this way ahead of you in the intersection from 100 feet. Sight distance for turning here and being able to anticipate a car that may turn in your way is 275 feet. Obviously, those sight distances don't exist in this direction. Going the opposite direction on Hollister Avenue looking north, it's even further obstructed on this side. Looking on El Salto, again, we have blocked visibility, especially to the left here. And looking east, again, we have restricted sight distances. Looking at, certainly we could do code enforcement and go after removing the vegetation in the area. I think that would have a bigger impact on the neighborhood to increase the sight distances than the installation of stop signs. So simply our recommendation is to approve a resolution ordering the installation of stop signs in both directions of Hollister Avenue at El Salto Drive. Just remind the council we received, I believe, 6 emails from surrounding neighbors, all in support of the installation of stop signs. Some did request 4-way stops. This intersection doesn't have the volume to install stop signs in all 4 directions. And let's see, we sent out a mail to every resident within 300 feet of this intersection. So that's my report. If you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Steve. Questions of staff?
Steve, I understand about the volume, but it seems like we're creating another Beverly and Oak that I'm painfully familiar with, which is, as you pull up to the stop sign on Hollister, at least in one direction, I think it's the southbound direction, you have to be halfway into the intersection before you can see on El Salto. Regardless of the volume, should we not consider this as a potential 4-way stop?
You know, coming to a stop and then creeping forward is a lot safer than not having a stop sign there or even a yield sign where you're not coming to a stop. So the idea that you come to a stop and then have to pull forward to see, I think is an okay traffic movement. Because you've come to a stop, you've yielded to anybody that's moving, and you know, if you're going to then come out, you're going to be able to come out at such a speed that you're safe. Certainly, clearly obstructed sight distance in all 4 directions is a warrant for having all-way stop. I think a lot of other intersections up there would warrant that too if we wanted to go that direction.
And we're never going to keep the vegetation back. If anything's going to change the way that neighborhood looks,
right,
it's making all the vegetation go away. It's what Depot Hill is. And what I find, especially on our street, you know, Oak and Beverly, is that the people at the stop sign assume that the people on Beverly have a stop sign as well, and once they stop, they go forward, and the people on Beverly are just whipping through. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you. This is time for public to address this issue. If anyone would like to address the council on this issue, please step forward. Tom?
Tom Parker. I live on Grand Avenue. If you're only going to have 2 stop signs instead of 4, they ought to be on El Salto, in my view, because most of the traffic, or an awful lot of the traffic on El Salto, is on its way down to Monarch Cove, and they're not paying attention to anything. So the people that live on the side streets, Hollister, Oakland, so forth, are aware of the problem, and they always slow down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jerry Clark. I live at 502 El Salto. I can understand the Hollister traffic needing stop signs in that direction. I can't see it going down El Salto. There's a stop sign on Sacramento. There's a stop sign on Oakland, and this is just 1 block in the middle. There's no sight issue on El Salto. There is a horrible sight issue on Hollister in both directions. And there's, you know, I applaud you if you put stop signs on Hollister, but there is absolutely no need for them on El Salto. We see the traffic going in and out of Monarch Cove. They're not going that fast because there's only one block where they can speed up and then slow down. So it's not been an issue. Of the 45 years I've lived there, the only near misses I've seen is going between Escalona and the cliff, never the other direction.
Thank you, Jerry.
Hi, my name is Stuart Greninger. I actually have property on Hollister. The thing with the stop sign, I'm not really for it or against it, but I think when you do put stop signs in these intersections that you should have visibility as far as hedges and stuff that you can't see the stop sign. I know there are other places on the hill that you have had hedges cut down so you can see the oncoming traffic, but there are also places on the hill that you let them grow up and they're blocking the views again and you don't do anything about it. So I guess that's my concern about having visual contact with the cars that are coming up to the stop sign. That's all.
Thank you, Stuart. Now's your chance. Anyone else like to address the council? Okay, being none, we'll return to council for discussion. I have one question to staff here before you say, Steve, how wide is the easement there? Both directions.
I don't have that information with me. I'm sorry. I'd have to look it up.
I'll go ahead and get started since I brought this up. I think the important thing to notice here from the map is that I think most people in Depot Hill realize that any intersection needs at least one way to be controlled. And the absence of that control on Hollister and El Salto makes it a hazard. So I think the proper thing here is the placement of a stop sign, which it seems like most of the neighbors are in agreement of that. The question now is whether it belongs on Hollister or on El Salto, and we've heard different opinions on that. The point that the Public Works Director made is that we seem to have an alternating pattern that exists, and it would seem to make sense logically by the pattern to put it on Hollister. And my biggest concern here is safety of the kids that are up there and just making sure that at least there's one set of stop signs. The concern I have is that because of the growth that's there, and the growth to some of the neighbors is very near and dear to them. Some of the hedges on the corners has been cut and some of the hedges have not been cut. And the ones that did volunteer to cut their hedges definitely improved the visibility. The home that's on from that corner, it would be the, let's see, that is going to be the southeast corner. There's an extreme massive amount of hedging that grows out there, and I don't know whether it would be feasible right there on the right-hand side where the stop sign would be so that it could be seen. Coming from the other direction on Hollister, there's no problem. We already saw that direction, whereas on El Salto, there's no obstructions in either direction. So that's my only comment on that, is that even though I see the sequencing of the streets, I'm concerned about that massive hedging and what it would entail if we would require them to cut that back so the sign was visible. But you can see right there that if the sign was there, nobody would see it.
Right, and it will take some trimming of that hedge just to make the sign visible, and that would be our goal, because certainly that is within the right-of-way.
And then that would be fine. I just wanted to bring that up. Like I said, the suggestion you made with the alternating sequence seems to be logical, and that's my only comments.
I'd like to try it on Hollister and see if it works. If we have any other problems, we can always take a look at it again. But I think we should have people trim their bushes for safety. It's a liability for us as a city if we know about an area that could be possibly dangerous and prevent some problems. We did deal with this a number of years ago and did ask people to trim their bushes because they were actually taking up parking places at the time. And parking is so precious up there that I think we should ask people again to trim their bushes. And we did it very nicely last time, and people did comply, and it went very well.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. There will be
you,
stop
Counsel.
signs on the Hollister on both sides and not on El Salto. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the first part of item C, which is the accept an oral report from the Traffic and Parking Commission on their makeup change and we will hold the recommendations regarding the parking structure project till the end of the agenda. Steve?
Yeah, the Traffic and Parking Commission met last night, and this is one of the 2 agenda items on there. And the chair of the commission, Nels Westman, is here tonight to give you a report.
Good evening. My name is Nels Westman. I am the chair of your Traffic and Parking Commission. Several months ago, the council directed that the commission conduct a self-examination on such issues as our mission, our size and composition, areas of concentration, and so forth. The Traffic and Parking Commission met last night to complete this self-examination, and I would like to summarize the results for you. Our mission. The Traffic and Parking Commission was created by the City Council in 2008 as an advisory body to the Council. For the benefit of the listeners, I would like to read quickly the mission which you assigned us. The purpose of the Capitola Traffic and Parking Commission is to develop short, medium, and long-term plans for the City Council to consider that considerations that address traffic and parking demands in the village by considering citywide traffic and parking improvements developed in various studies and reports provided to the City Council. Once these plans are in place, the Commission shall act as an advisor to the City Council on implementation of the plans and other duties requested by the Council. Please note that while the focus is clearly on the village, it does include flexibility to examine citywide traffic and parking improvements as needed. The Commission's experience is that traffic improvements in the commercial areas such as 41st Avenue rely heavily on the expertise and advice of professional traffic engineers. Similarly, parking issues fall most directly on private property owners and the planning professionals and planning commission. In the village, on the other hand, any change regarding traffic and parking generally results in a lively dialogue amongst residents, neighbors, visitors, merchants, and employees, as well as professionals and planners. Thus, we believe the review and input of a deliberately diverse and involved advisory body such as the Traffic and Parking Commission is of value to the Council. In summary, the Commission reaffirmed its original mission as stated above and is comfortable with its primary focus on the always interesting traffic and parking issues of our village. The Commission is ready at any point for direction from the Council to address issues citywide as needed. Our composition is fixed by your resolution. We have our full complement of 10 commissioners and have been pretty much fully staffed throughout our existence. We are a 50-50 mix of veteran and relatively newly appointed commissioners. We feel this results in a good blend of institutional knowledge tempered with fresh ideas and viewpoints. All commissioners are subject to reappointment by the Council every 2 years. While we function well as a body of 10 members, we are not opposed to increasing the size to include, for example, a commissioner from 41st Avenue. Our only concern would be that there might be a drop-off in attendance by that member once it became clear that much of the Commission's work is focused in the village. That non-attendance could exacerbate a quorum issue. And that's my report. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Nils. Is there any other member of the public who would like to address us on this issue? I have a question, Steve. Has the Village Traffic and Circulation Committee ever addressed issues outside of the village?
They have made recommendations regarding several parking in issues, one on 38th Avenue, one on Claire's and 41st. They weren't the initiators, but they reviewed the plans and made recommendations to the council.
What is on their plate now, and what do you see on our plate in the future as far as decisions or recommendations traffic-wise for the council?
One of the things they've talked about going through is a review of the neighborhood parking permit program and making recommendations on that. There's always the idea that we need to do a comprehensive parking meter rate study. They initiated that. It's been tabled since we've learned we need to do a comprehensive study from the Coastal Commission. And then there's the discussion you're about to have on a structure and their role in that as they go forward.
Is the roundabout in their preview?
The roundabout will be something they will review if it goes through and make recommendations and make recommendations to council on that, yes.
Thank you. Questions, staff?
Perhaps we should look at ourselves for items to be sent to the Parking and Traffic Commission and not necessarily criticize for them not paying attention outside the village, but they have not been tasked with anything in particular. So I think that it's still a very viable commission. I think more members from the other side of the river would be a good idea, and it should be more citywide.
Debbie?
I'd like to see him look at the issue of the new parking lot that we have and how well it meets our needs now and in the projected future, and whether we need additional parking and what that might look like, because there's lots of different options. And I will bring up the idea that I brought up before. If our main goal is to find more parking for the village, the old cheap remedy that still works, our idea, our plan at the time, 20 years ago, more than that, lease the space at AAA, run another shuttle down. That was in our plan to when we did the neighborhood parking permits. We never exercised it. We never did have a real lease, but that was the plan, to run 2 shuttles if we needed to. It's quick, cheap, and easy, and old-fashioned, and it would work. We don't need to talk about a multi-zillion-dollar parking structure until maybe we've tried that. Maybe that'll solve our needs. Parking structure is very jazzy, very sexy to some maybe, but if the problem is we need more parking for the village, then let's look at a simple solution like that first. It's not the jazziest, we got more signs to direct people to it, but it'll work. It works for Art and Wine at the Bank of America. We have lots of different locations, so I'd like them to look at that idea.
I just want to remind the council that the parking structure portion of the discussion is supposed to be held after the commission portion of the discussion is completed, just
Thank you, John.
as a reminder.
We'll direct our comments to the makeup of the committee and future. Josh?
Yeah, one thing that's always been of interest to me is what direction has there been, if any, from the Coastal Commission as to how many parking spots we need to provide? I'd like to understand that. I know it's in the local coastal our plan, but I think we gave them that number and they accepted it. So I'd like to know what that direction has been. What guidance have we got from them, since it's really driving our parking efforts? And the other thing is the City Council voted to do a trial period on parking 3 hours as opposed to 2 hours. And I'd like the parking committee to look at that too.
Just again, the portion of the discussion that you're supposed to be having right now is with respect to the makeup and charge of the traffic commission,
Okay.
right? So I think that would be best deferred as well.
Is there a motion to keep the traffic and circulation intact, or do we want to add members? Or
Then, if you're looking for a motion, I would like to keep the parking and traffic intact, and if possible, to add member or members from on the other side of the river in the avenues to make it more of a citywide committee.
I would, if you're going to say that, I would like to see Cliffwood Heights also be included.
Well, certainly. I want to.
Well, we have one member. Ed, you appointed someone from.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we need to, just to be in concern, if we need to bring this back and discuss
Yeah.
about enhancing the committee to where it represents districts of the city. And this would be something on a future agenda.
I really think that that is within the scope of the item that's before you tonight.
Yeah.
So I think that would be perfectly permissible
Okay.
to
Then I
discuss
would be
that now.
open to having the committee, and even though we do have a main thrust, and the scope here does say to deal with the village, if we had representatives from the city, and we're really close to that. I believe we have members from almost all districts there now.
And we could expand it to have more at-large members and have staff come back to us and see, and even advertise and say, we're looking for at-large members from Cliffwood Heights, from the avenues, so on and so forth.
I think our focus will probably end up being over on the avenues is where we fall short. Okay,
Certainly.
I think we have Cliffwood covered and the Jewel Box, and I think that's just our, and it would be good to have those areas represented.
Are we talking about redefining the committee, or are we saying this is going to be a citywide traffic and circulation? If it is, the makeup is not correct. If you're talking about a traffic and circulation committee for the village, the makeup is correct. But if you're talking to citywide, our makeup is far from being.
Well, that's why we're talking about expanding it and having at-large members beyond the members that are there now.
Well, I think that's why I brought it up, is I think we should bring it back and have a discussion on it about the possibilities. We could all think about how whether we want to do it, make it a citywide committee, whether we want to leave it. Because you're right, if we do want to make it a citywide committee, it's stacked pretty heavy with village businesses. We don't have a 41st Avenue business rep. We have a village business rep. I think I would rather bring it back for something that we would have a discussion about to see how big we want it and what areas and what we already have, and then we would
Okay.
know what openings we need.
But
So
there-
your
but-
motion is to
well,
make it.
But there again, let's go back to what's the problem we're trying to solve. We have this great committee that's working on village parking issues, which are a problem, but what other problem are we trying to solve? And because it's going to be hard to find somebody to go down to be on a village advisory committee for the parking and traffic if they don't have any buy-in to it or any concern about it or it's not their neighborhood, it's not their issue, they don't deal with it all the time. So, if there's a specific other topic that you think they're going to tackle that is citywide, let's talk about that, but I think the committee is good for what it does. So if you want a citywide parking and traffic, what are they going to do? What are they going to look at? What are they going to talk about? I'm not sure there's enough for them to talk about. I mean, we certainly have parking issues and traffic issues everywhere, but what would a committee what's the issue that you want them to solve? What's the problem you want them to look at and bring back some ideas about? And I don't think that's been identified yet. So if we can identify that, then maybe we can put a committee together to work on that and get people that are really interested in that. Because last time we had a citywide committee that dealt with sidewalks, and what else did that committee on? That Ron Burke was on. They all pretty much, we had people from different areas, but they all pretty much just looked at their own area. They didn't really look at how changing something in their area, that the traffic patterns or the streets or the sidewalks thing, would affect their neighbor. It was very parochial committee, it seemed to me. I mean, they did good work, they were great people, but it wasn't a citywide plan because they just didn't do that or get there. So I'm sure a citywide parking and traffic committee is needed or would work. I mean, if we have something that we want them to look at,
Then
let's
allow
talk-
me
let's
to
develop that.
alter my motion, and that is, at this stage, let us keep the Traffic and Parking Commission in place and look to staff and the chair and the commission to see if we could also solve this with subcommittees within parking and traffic. So that if we do task an outside the village traffic situation, we could bring in other members.
Okay.
Like we do art selection committees. Art and
Okay.
Cultural has 3 Art and Cultural Commission members, and they bring in 3 neighborhood members in the area that we're doing the art. So there are always ways to do this.
well, we're going to have a big neighborhood meeting over the proposed roundabout. That'll really bring people in, from all the different areas when we
All we have to do is
discuss that.
find somebody who can actually sit on that meeting.
I will second your motion.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to leave the Traffic and Circulation Committee intact until further discussion. And all those in favor?
Aye.
So carries. Thank you. We're going to move back to item B on the agenda, and due to a recent ruling by the Fair Political Practice Commission during the month of June, Michael Termini and myself are disqualified from participating. And Tony, could you give an explanation of what happened here, please?
Yes, I have a rather detailed explanation. So and it's technical. So bear with me.
Okay.
I have a spiel here. First of all, just by way of background, as you know, the Fair Political Practices Commission is a state organization that is charged with the duty to promulgate rules and regulations designed to ensure that public officials make decisions that are in the public interest and are not for personal financial gain. And the way they do that is they have adopted regulations that set forth in great detail when a public official, whether it's statewide office or city council or planning commission or board of supervisors, when a decision that comes before that body may have a person sitting on that, when a decision may have a financial effect on an individual who may be considering or voting on the item, that disqualifies them from participating. And among the myriad of regulations that exist is the general rule in California that states that a public official may not participate in a decision affecting real property if the property in question is within 500 feet of property that's owned by the official who would be making the decision. Notwithstanding this general rule, however, council members or planning commissioners in the city of Capitola have been cleared by the FPPC to participate in decisions affecting real property that's within that 500-foot radius, based on an exception called the small jurisdictions exception, which is contained in the FPPC regulations. Specifically, and I promise I'm not going to be reading statutes all night, but it's section 18707.10. And that regulation says that if a council member or planning commissioner in a city of under 30,000 population and covering a geographic area of less than 10 square miles, that an official may participate, notwithstanding the general 500-foot rule, if the council member or planning commissioner's property is more than 300 feet from the boundaries of the property that is the subject of the decision. Capitola has a population of around 10,000 and an area of about 1.5 square miles, so it fit well within this small jurisdictions exception. And it's pursuant to this exception that council members Norton and Termini and Planning Commissioner Ortiz have been able to participate in discussions relating to the City Hall parking lot, City Hall, and the Pacific Cove parking lot, even though they reside or own property that's within that 500-foot radius, but outside of the 300-foot radius. It's the same exception that enabled Councilmember Bertrand to participate in discussions relating to the Monterey Park skate park proposal, which is, again, outside of the 300-foot radius from Councilmember Bertrand's residence, but it's within 500 feet. Earlier this month, in researching a separate issue, it was actually the issue that I spoke to earlier involving Councilmember Bothorf and the stop sign on Hollister. I discovered that effective June 15th of last month, effective June 15th, that section that I mentioned, 18707.10, was repealed by the FPPC, which means that in a small jurisdiction in California now, just like in any other larger city like Santa Cruz or Watsonville, the 500-foot rule applies. Upon discovering this, I conferred with the FPPC, and my opinion about the effect of that modification of the regulation was confirmed. I also discussed with them decisions of an ongoing nature, such as the item that's on your agenda this evening, that have been the subject of much public discussion and among the council and planning commission before this regulation change was made. They confirmed that effective as of June 15th, you are technically now disqualified if you own property within 500 feet of the subject of the decision. As Councilmember Mayor Norton mentioned, I've conferred with the council members about this, and they understand and agreed that their continued participation is not permitted under the circumstances, so will be recusing themselves. I've also had the same discussion with Councilmember Ortiz, whose property is likewise outside of the 300 feet. Planning Commissioner Ortiz. whose property is within that 500-foot radius. I'm happy to respond to any questions or comments.
Mr. Mayor, it should also be noted that we now have 3 planning commissioners who cannot sit on any decisions regarding Pacific Cove. That we have Commissioner Westman,
That's right.
and we also have Ed.
Yes, Planning
Ed
Commissioner Newman owns property within 500 feet, but it is commercial property, so he was already disqualified from participating in the decision prior to this rule change. But now you do have 3 planning commissioners who are disqualified, and in order to consider the item, you'll have to go by the rule that allows one of them to become requalified by drawing straws. Once you have a bare quorum, then the decision could go forward. So it would
Right
be
up there next to flipping a coin to do things, okay? So.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about contacting the FPPC and seeing if there's any interest in having a further discussion about this regulation change. They do make these rule changes in a public process, but they don't necessarily do outreach to the affected jurisdictions. So we didn't find out about it until the rule was already in effect.
Thank you, Tony. Under those rules, I will recluse myself as Ed will take over as mayor, and I'll move out of the room. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, before you leave, I will also recuse myself, but I think it's notes mentioning that everyone in this room, everyone up here knows. This is truly a room full of Capitola residents. There is not a body out there that all of us don't recognize. The only difference between the people out there and the people up here is this is our turn. That's the only difference. You can speak about time in the barrel if you like, but I would ask those that we leave here to keep that in mind. This is a time when our city that we all love is wounded, and that I have every confidence you will do everything you need to do to heal the wound. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item B, which is a receiver report regarding a public process to evaluate options to develop a new public park, a parking structure, new civic facilities, and a hotel on 420 Capitola Avenue and the Pacific Cove sites. Staff report.
Vice Mayor Botdorf, council members. I have a relatively short presentation this evening for you, as I know we've been through the background before on this project. Nevertheless, I did want to touch on some of these things briefly on the off chance that someone wasn't aware of the project and did want some of the background. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to get an update regarding the outreach process that's taken place so far for a concept, redevelopment concept for the Pacific Cove site, and then also to consider whether or not the outreach process should continue moving forward. Overall, big picture background is in 2013, the City Council gave direction to staff to develop a strategy to build a parking structure on the lower Pacific Cove site. That came in conjunction with the closure of the Pacific Cove Mobile Home Park and the development of a temporary parking lot that was intended to be a bridge, if you will, until such time as a parking structure could be built. In 2014, the city adopted a general plan which outlined a kind of a broad vision for the Pacific Cove site. Talked about a number of issues and talked about the 20-year vision for the site, which included some potential changes. In 2014, later that same year, staff presented a concept that implemented a number of the goals that were outlined in the general plan. Overall, that concept was intended to create a park and open space in Lower Pacific Cove, relocate our emergency responders for the city's emergency responders out of the floodplain. This would be done through the development of a multi-story parking structure to consolidate the surface parking lots on this site into the parking structure. And in addition, the intent behind it was to find a funding source to pay for the overall improvements, and that was proposed through a hotel on this site where we sit today, which would generate the revenue to finance the debt necessary to build the project. The City Council has held multiple hearings over the last 10 months to consider whether or not to move forward with any sort of outreach of this process. Ultimately, earlier this year, the council directed the mayor to form a subcommittee to develop a specific outreach plan for this project. That outreach plan was presented to the City Council this spring and was unanimously directed by Council to proceed with the outreach plan. The outreach plan included 4 steps, a dedicated newsletter, city newsletter specifically focused on this project, dedicated city website, facilitated workshop that would be, the entire community would be invited to, and then followed by a mail survey, some sort of survey of the community about the project goals and the level of support for the various goals. We've completed the first 3 steps in the process. We have not done the mail survey at this time, and this check-in is in advance of doing any sort of survey work. The workshop was held, I think, 2 weeks ago now, I want to say. We have more than 100 residents in attendance, probably over 120 would be my guess. Overall, there was very limited support for the goals that the plan was intended to achieve. There was strong opposition that's organized to oppose the overall concept. One of the things that I worked with pretty in depth with the subcommittee, the mayor's subcommittee on this process, was trying to come up with a process that would, the phrase that we used was early off-ramps, that would allow the city to pursue this, but also not invest too much money in it if ultimately at the end of the day the decision was not to proceed. And that's what I am recommending this evening, is that I do not see strong support for the project goals and relatively organized opposition. And unfortunately, I've been unable to, the mayor subcommittee on this project was equally affected by the change in FPPC rules. I've been unable to get a quorum of that group together. I've conversed with a number of them by phone regarding this recommendation, and it's my recommendation alone. It's not the subcommittee's recommendation. They have not met since then, but overall they understand the need for the recommendation and the reasoning behind it. So my recommendation for this evening is that we stop work on this current proposed concept for the Pacific Cove site. As I've mentioned, there's strong opposition at this point, and really we haven't identified strong proponents for the specific elements, for moving the police out of the floodplain, for the park, for the parking structure, or for the economic development components of this. It's not to say that these projects go away. The general plan is adopted, and it does identify these as long-term goals for the city, and particular elements of them, you know, potentially in the future could be reconsidered, maybe in a reconstituted form. But my recommendation would be that those should be considered only at a time when there's a constituency that steps up and raises their hands and says it's time to do these things. So that's my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions of staff? None? None? This is a public hearing, so at this time we'll open it up to the public for anybody who would like to make a comment on this item. Please come forward. And
just for clarification, this is an appropriate time for reporting in from the Traffic and Parking Commission?
that will be following this. That will be following. That'll be a separate item after this. Thanks, Nels.
Hi, I'm Joe Ortiz. I live up the street. I don't have to recuse myself on this one, so I'm here. A lot of people think the process was done wrong on this project. The City Council and staff, we feel, in a democracy should have first asked the community what its priorities are. The general plan outlined dozens of goals for the betterment of Capitola. But it seems that when a handful of people decide on their own what a city's goals should be, it leads to the opposition to the project we all experienced at the community meeting on June 23rd. To regain the trust of Capitola residents, I feel that the City Council should drop this plan tonight, and I hope somebody makes a motion to that effect. Thank you.
My name is Mick Ruth, longtime resident of Capitola. I think all of you are well aware of my position on this project. I think I've made myself very clear on it over the last several months. So rather than address the specifics of this plan, what I'd rather do is discuss the reason all of you are sitting up there. I think over the last 4.5 decades that I've been involved with the city in one way or another, with very few exceptions, this community has always trusted the council to do the right thing. And in the last several months, the city, the council's embarked on a path that really doesn't reflect the will of the people and the will of the residents of this community. I think it's raised concerns that the city is out of touch with the people that live here. And those are the very reasons we elected you to be in touch. It's damaged the trust, as Joe said, that we've placed in you. And I think it's really hurt the goodwill that has taken years to build up between the community and the city. So tonight, I'm asking you, do the right thing to restore the trust. Consider remodeling City Hall, look at a 2-story parking structure or none at all, and move forward with the plan that the community supports. And I'd urge you, put the hotel, the new City Hall plan to bed tonight. Okay? The community doesn't want this project. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Hanson. I live on 327 Riverview Avenue. And I want to second the comments about the fact that this was not the most transparent of discussions. It was put in the general plan. The GPAC really never discussed this. It just got put in as a possible scenario. But my complaint or my objection to this is it just is way too much money for a city of 10,000 people to commit. And I know there's studies done, you know, and projections about how much it will cost. How many public works projects come in, you know, on budget, shall we say? And let's face it, some of them come in way over budget. And I know we have projections for TOT, you know, to offset the debt service and stuff like that. But what happens if there's another recession rather, and you know, people aren't coming to Capitola and the TOT really falls off? It is just too big a commitment in money for this city to make.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Lori Hill. I am a Capitola resident. And I do actually want to thank the city and the council for the workshop that was put on. It was well attended. It shared a lot of important information. And I think your message back from those attendees was very clear. And I do hope you do the right thing tonight. I would say, though, that I do believe the situation with the police department does warrant further investigation, and not just about floodplains and all of that. I think we should be looking at the adequacy of that facility and looking at it from the terms of, you know, response times from the police department and the safety of our responding officers. So I think that should still remain as a part of a conversation that moves forward, and I hope you'll make the right decision with regards to the rest of the project tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
Hello, Councilman. I'm Dave Kramer, and I live up on Pine Street. And it hurts to do this because I actually want every piece of the concept that's been presented. Some items a little more than others. For example, I think the parking structure is something that will need to be done in some period of time. Moving the police, probably a smart idea. I felt that the marketing of this project, and I'm a 35-year marketer, I felt that the marketing was disingenuous. I felt that we were manipulated in some of the statements that came in the city's newsletter. I didn't feel comfortable equating the sewer pipe break with climate change. And I think that inference was made. And I think we could have been, I would imagine that had the concept been disaggregated and discussed item for item on its merits, I think you would have had more success. I also think that this is a theme that has that I've experienced here over the last 18 months. We've been residents for 8 years. The discussion of the tax last August was abrupt, it was not transparent, and it failed because you couldn't get reasonably minded people to get behind the process. So, in fact, I believe in the concept, but I ask you to look at our processes and make sure that when we do address one another, that we do it with absolute honesty. I don't think a wink-wink exaggeration for something this important is palatable on either side. I know that the opponents, I think, were equally injudicious in some of the words that were chosen, some of the phrases that were made. But that doesn't excuse the city to be equally aggressive in the way that it was marketed. And I would ask that we take a better look or a longer look at how we communicate with one another so that there is this basis of honesty and trust. I felt like my trust of the city was somewhat abridged by what I read in the newsletter. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else like to speak on this topic? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Al Carlson. I came here 43 years ago, and I was one of the first ones on the finance committee for the city. And some of you remember we owned all the land around the library. It was acreage, which could have been a skateboard park, a park, would have been one of the most beautiful pieces of property we had. And we lost that through some financial problems that we did here in the city. And then we took on the Rispin Mansion and made another major mistake. So we made two big mistakes. And in my opinion, all the 8 years I was in the finance committee, we barely made it every year. The last thing this city needs is debt. And please don't burden our children, our grandchildren with debt like this. I mean, I've lived here long enough. I've seen the two major mistakes we made in the past, and one of them we still got, and one of them we lost and will never get back. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Anybody? Up, come on up. It's a nice picture on the wall, Lewis, by the way.
It's a beautiful picture. I moved here about 30 years ago, and I think that this is sort of absolutely, totally out of what we think we should be doing. And it just shows that this can't be a hotel over here. That's number one. We can foster traffic even worse than it is now. And I just don't see how it works. This is a wonderful community, and I would hate to see it get trashed. That's the way I think it's happening. So we got to save it and make it work. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your comments. Anyone else have anything to say? This is your time.
My name is George Ankeny. I'm a Capitola resident. I've been studying economics and politics for some time now, and I'd like to say that considering the current global economic situation, we will be seeing greatly reduced levels of tourists in this town, and that parking structure in a hotel are not just unnecessary, but yes, the debt burden that will come with them could very well cause tremendous problems for this town. And I just want to make sure everyone knows exactly how serious the global economic situation is, so that we don't make any mistakes in building unnecessary structures. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, I won't write my name on this because I think you could spell it after all these years. And the one time that it wasn't spelled right is on the plaque on this building. So there's another mistake for you. But
that means the building should probably go, right, Ron?
Yeah, right. Well, actually, I was here when this building was remodeled. This was the corporation garage. The Caterpillar that used to dam the creek was parked right behind you guys there. The police department, in all the years that I've lived here and all the years that the city's been incorporated, only had water running through it one time, and it wasn't from a 100-year flood. It was from a broken storm drain, a drain that had just been addressed by the county. And while I don't want to belabor the point, I think grave injustice was done to Capitola in that they created a venturi that just blew out the pipe that was too small. You don't put a big pipe into a little pipe and then empty it into the creek. It's a problem. Having said that, I believe that you can do several of the things you want to do within the financial constraints that this city has always had. We've been a city of 10,000 for a long time. We're actually getting smaller instead of bigger. I don't know what the reason for that is, but maybe it's smaller families, or maybe it's second homes. There's a lot of reasons for it. But the whole thing in this proposal was that I look at the fire station across the street, and I live next to the fire station right across from you. In fact, I share your address here. I live at 420 Riverview, and this is 420 Capitola Avenue. With that fire department, you know, they've never been flooded out. We've never been flooded out here by a 100-year flood. But I do think that the city needs to consolidate some of the parking. I don't share the vision that was put into place by a very minority members of the community. I don't think we need a park in Lower Pacific Cove. I think that what we could do is possibly revisit the parking structure of years ago that was 2 stories, and maybe because we now have no mobile homes in the lower park, make the footprint of the new structure, if and when it's built, slightly larger to accommodate more than that original plan. And this plan is not the plan in 2008 or 2011. This is a plan that went back, 15 years or more. I'd also like to make one other comment, and I don't think we need to move City Hall. City Hall is high enough. It's out of the floodplain. Nobody works on the lower floor except the police department, and maybe that's a major concern. But do the right thing tonight. Put this thing to rest. Reinvestigate the use of the 2 ideas of relocating the police department out of the floodplain if you really want to, and do one other thing. Look at seeing if you can afford a parking structure that was envisioned some years ago within the revenues that exist today. And I say that because revenues that come from the parking meters and from the parking fines have been put into the general plan for years. And about 50% of that revenue has gone to looking for new parking, which a new structure would bring. The one final thing I'd like to say, this seems to have been driven by a general plan that was adopted in 2014. And I've always thought that general plans are a 20-year document. And it doesn't mean in 2015 we have to do all the things it says in that document. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Last chance. Anyone else? That's what's called timing.
I'll do this after. Members of the council, I'm Don Dreyer. I've been around Capitola over 70 years, almost all of my years, in one form or another. I have a problem. As chairman of the Venetian Court Homeowners, I've been trying to get 6 garbage cans for the beach additional for about 3 years now. So far I've got no garbage cans, and you want to put up a $50 million edifice here. So I don't know how this is going to work. The parking, it's, we have to do something about it. But that's a different subject, I think, other than the hotel. The hotel, you have one planned, yours planned. I don't know how many rooms that is, but whatever it is, it's a few too many, maybe not enough. But we've got to do something. It's a little like the garbage cans. I still need them because I'm supporting the city. All of my members are supporting the city by paying for a second garbage pickup because of all the tourists who bring us cans, material for those cans, and particularly over the 4th of July. So we ask a little help. Maybe you want some. I don't know.
Thanks for your comments. Okay, does anybody else like to come up? Is there anybody else in the lobby waiting for a grand entrance? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period, bring it back to council. Who'd like to start?
Yeah, I'll start. So, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming here. It's truly wonderful to see a lot of my neighbors, a lot of my concerned citizens here in Capitola. Last Tuesday night at New Brighton was a turning point for the citizens of Capitola. The message was no to a proposal which on many points did not seem to meet the needs or be realistic as presented. Many felt strongly that the city of Capitola should be focusing on projects of major importance, not to start a new project which would put the city in considerable debt. After the meeting, people said to me, Capitola needs wins, that's a quote, such as building a new library, completing important CIP projects, such as Park Avenue, 38th Avenue, Clare Street, and McCormick Park, and addressing the poor condition of Capitola Wharf. That was also a quote. The city has made promises, set expectations. The citizens want results. Last Tuesday at New Brighton was a reminder to me and to everyone who came what Capitola is about. We have a community that deeply cares about how this city is run. It's our city. That's why we care that way. We want to be a part of that process, which is why I ran. This is where we live, and in many cases, that goes back many generations. This is our home, and we care about our future. Tonight, in many ways, is about our future. It's the start, in my mind, of how more of us could get involved in our city government. We understand that the proposal had our future in mind. However, as structured, and for reasons just stated, the proposed sale of the city hall, construction of a new city hall, and converting Lower Pack Cove to a city park is not a viable option. I move that the proposed sale of City Hall, the construction of a new City Hall, the sale and the construction of a new City Hall, and the conversion of Lower Pack Cove to a park be rejected. That's my motion.
Second. I agree with Jacques' comments tonight. It's a good analysis. And I'm really sorry I missed that meeting on Tuesday night. It was scheduled a night I work. So maybe in the future when we have important city meetings, we can schedule them on nights that all council members can attend. I have great respect for Mick and Ron, who have walked this town 8 times. I walked it for the 7th time last October. And that is how you find out what's going on in the town. You knock on doors and you talk to people. And after a while, you get a real good sense of what's going on. And things do change. And we have a lot of new people in town. And you have to change with that. And that's what I've tried to do. Always be open to new ideas. Always be open to new people, new projects. Keep an open mind. The times change, you know, and so forth. But on this one, in walking last October, I didn't hear anybody say, you know, I want any of this. In fact, when people asked, what's this talk about a hotel and a new city hall, I said, oh, it's nothing. It's just a couple of council members and the city manager talking about it. And they're coming up with a scheme and they're coming up with something, but don't worry, it's not going to go anywhere. Because I naively thought it was so crazy that, of course, it's not going to go anywhere. And so I am really sorry that, and I apologize to all of you, that it got as far as it did and that you had to spend your hard-earned time and money and efforts fighting this and going to meetings and coming tonight. I thank you all very much for all hanging in there to do this. But, you know, that's, you know, I've been around, you know, here for 30 years too, and you know, I've never had any process like this that was so crazy. So I really apologize for that. The, you know, the whole issue of parking and traffic has been something we've talked about for 40 years and we'll probably continue to talk about because, you know, there is no one solution. There is no magic bullet. There was a parking structure before I got on the council in the early 80s, a multi-story parking structure down at the theater parking lot site that Nick and Ron and Jerry remember. Hotly, I mean, current, it's hotly debated, a multi-story parking structure down there. And the conversation at the time was, are you going to funnel all that traffic down there into the village to snake around the Esplanade to go up, you know, this parking structure? You know, it had its pros and cons, you know, but they ended up not doing it. And so in 84, 83, this property became available. And to address the parking needs in the village, a program was put in place to buy the land and eventually move people out of the lower lot, move them out of the upper lot by attrition, as it happened, and then at some point maybe look at the lower lot for additional uses. And that was paid for with a 3-pronged approach. The city would pay for a third, the merchants would assess themselves a third, and we put in parking meters. If you don't think that things are controversial today, this room was packed when we put parking meters in the village because the merchants came and said, no one will come to Capitola Village if we put parking meters and people have to pay to come here. But we said we need it for the revenue to pay for a parking lot for the village. And it worked. The parking assessment later on was done away with for the merchants, but that's and then after I said that talked about the running another shuttle. I remember why we didn't do it because Mick brought up the fact how many people are you going to squeeze into Capitola Village and it's still going to be a nice place. I remember Mick talking about that. How many people are you going to squeeze in here and it's still going to be a place where we enjoy it, where we're going to bring our friends and family, or is it just going to be, you know, like an amusement park? And so, you know, I was kind of in favor of, oh, we didn't have another shuttle bus, you know, why not? But I really appreciate that mixed perspective on it, which was, it is what it is. It's a contained area. It's small. It can only hold so many people. The Beach Boys came here once, and their representative got up and asked, could they have a Beach Boys concert on the beach? And we said, have you been to the beach? And the fellow said, well, I sort of know where it is. And we said, you know, you really should think about asking Santa Cruz. They have a huge beach. They have a stage on the beach, and they're all set for it, and they do their advertising. You're all plugged in there. You know what they said? We asked them, and they said no, that they were too small. And so we said, so why did you come to Capitola? But, so we've had a lot of interesting things that have happened to us. The goodwill is something that I really don't want to squander at all, 1 ounce of, because that's how I have gotten elected. It's by trust. People know me, they know the council members, they know they can call them up, they know where they stand, they know where they're coming from, they know where they're kind of going to take them, they know they will be listened to, they know that I feel, my position is that I feel I'm a mirror of the community. I have ideas and thoughts and crazy ideas sometimes, but I also really feel that I want to reflect what you want. And when I was a resident on Depot Hill, I was active with their neighborhood association, Depot Hill Neighborhood Association. We'd come down here and we'd talk to the council, tell them what we wanted, and they didn't listen to us sometimes. So I ran for city council. And I want to say tonight publicly to Mick and Ron, I'm sorry I ran in 1984. I'm sorry I ran against you, and I've always wanted to say that. Because you guys were really good guys, and I didn't know it at the time. So I'm really happy that I can get that off my chest. Because they were really good guys, and the council was really good, and they did a lot of really wonderful things for this community. But it took me to be part of it to understand that. Even from the audience, I didn't understand it. I remember getting up at a council meeting and said, you shouldn't, I was a school teacher, you shouldn't spend any money, city money, on that Christmas party, because at my school, we wouldn't spend any of the children's money, the student money, on a party for the teachers, so why would you spend the citizens' money here for a party for the employees? And of course, that went over like a lead balloon, and they did spend some. I was young and idealistic. I've learned a tremendous amount, but what I've learned is our main job is to listen to you, ask the right questions, and reflect that here, and not bring stuff that you don't want, that nobody knows about, and to put stuff in the newsletter that's not correct. I'm sorry about that. So I really apologize for, the council tonight, and I hope that we can put this behind us and move forward, because we are a great community. We have great people here. You have some, potentially great leaders and great staff, and we have done some great things. And I want to talk about Lewis's statement about doesn't want to trash the community. What I think he means, what I mean, and I hope you mean, let's not overdevelop the community. And that's what I see happening. That's where I see some forces coming in, people that are coming in with lots of money, and they want bigger and better, bigger and better, bigger and better sometimes. So we need to watch that, and that's what we're going through right now with the zoning ordinances, is how high, how big, how much are we going to allow in this town for the future. So follow that carefully and come to those planning commission meetings so you can talk about these issues. It's all nuts and bolts, but it's what's really important, because that's what is the framework for our community. And if we change too many of those things, then the community is going to change. So how high do you want Barry Swenson's hotel to be in the village? 3 stories? 4 stories? Because Barry Swenson, he's going to ask for 5. So keep your eye on that one. About the comment about the library site and what a valuable piece of property that was. We had a financial consultant come and talk with us about our finances, and that was very valuable. Maybe we should do that again. And he said, well, you're not in trouble, but you're carrying a little too much debt for your size. You are small. You are very small. You're very, very small. You're only 10,000 people and 2.5 square miles. You're very small. So if you got big ideas, maybe you should rein them in a little bit. Maybe you should sell part of that property and pay off part of your debt. Maybe Glenn can come up and add some more. We'll do revisionist history, because I'm probably remembering part of it wrong. But that we sold that property. We had developers come in and make us proposals, and we picked the proposal that we thought was the best and frankly gave us probably the most money, which was Kaufman and Broad. We saved a part for the library. So we bought that for the Rispin, because we knew we were going to need parking for the Rispin. And so we knew that, and so every year we would call up the owner of that property. It was a big field, and it had a barn on it, and say, would you like to sell to us? And they said, no, we're leaving it for our children. So next year we'd call, would you like to sell to us? No, we're leaving it for our children next year. Would you like to sell to us? Well, how much? And so we bought it. We have had such goodwill in this town that I have been proud and surprised that the measures have passed when we've asked you for more money, because we've always been seen as rich, and we weren't rich, we just had them all. And yes, we have captured more of our share of sales tax in other parts of the county. That was our plan, because we didn't have any money to pave the streets, to do parks, recreation, all sorts of other programs. We didn't have very much money. Our sales tax was really low, and we're only 2.5 square miles. So you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. You know, that property tax is what it is. We needed more money. So it was shopping centers or auto dealers. And so we developed a shopping center for the county to capture the sales tax for you, for parks, roads, recreation, beach, wharf, you know, whatever we need to run the city. And so when we went to the voters to ask you for more, I was shocked that you said yes, because I thought you'd say, oh no, they're rich. Look what they have, the money, they have lots of money. You were very generous, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart that we have had the measure, and then Measure P for Doug Piggott, because he was a great proponent of Measure P, and pushed that through. He and a couple other people with the city manager and other volunteers worked on that campaign, and Measure P was passed, which gave us that extra money. And then in the last one, it was passed also. So we have had this great trust, you know, kind of under the surface, you know, of the town, where the council's done a good job. They've taken care of the town. When we didn't used to have term limits, it was, you know, the same people ran. Nobody ran against us because we were doing a good job. And then we had term limits, and now you have a little more variety, or maybe not variety. But, you know, you don't get a lot of people to do this job because it takes so much time. So that the element of trust is so important in that case, because you want to know that the people that are here are people that you can trust. It'll make good decisions for you. So that's my hope going forward. Thanks for listening to my history lesson and my personal comments, but this is just a time to say those things and say I think it's all going to turn out okay.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to be in an uncomfortable situation here because I'm going to try to speak for two people that are out of the room, and I feel that some of their comments should apply because we didn't get here by an accident. We're here on purpose. The reason that this whole process is in front of you, whether it was deemed that the process was not done correct from the start or not, the process is here, and that's because a majority of the council voted to move forward with the process. And I can assure you, as sure as I was sitting in the audience when the broken pipe occurred and the residents of the mobile home park accused this council of doing backroom deals to accomplish something that they were not doing. They were trying to do the best they could, and that's what I believe everybody up here takes an oath to do. And I can also assure you that when we move forward to consider a plan to do the hotel, and to consider entering into an ENA, which was a legal process that prohibits us from talking about the process because it's a real estate deal which occurs in closed sessions. And when those votes occurred, that the individuals that voted in favor of that believed, at least in their minds, that they would be doing what was in the best interest of the city of Capitola. And what has come out of that is obviously a lot of overwhelming neighbor concern and interest about the process, because as I think I mentioned at the meeting at New Brighton, this is ultimately your town, and there's no question about that. I think the two things that come into play that I really want to start paying attention to, and I hope you can embrace that with me, is realize what a fact is and realize what perception is. And I think the one thing that I want to apologize as a council for is not getting you enough information, because with the lack of facts and the lack of information, rumors, other things come into play that I think led us to where we are today. And I don't believe there's any bad guys in this room. Obviously, every face in this room is familiar to almost everyone here, and this is a small town. I think that the message is clear. You know, we did try to engage into a process. I think there's one step of the process that's not been completed. Although I believe with the motion and the second that's here right now, I think that the best word that I think as Councilman Termini walked out of the room was his sentiment that I wanted to try to take from that comment before he was recused from the process is that it's time for the town to heal. This is not a town where we need to be adversary opponent. I think it's a town where we need to plan for the future. And I think, you know, if there was any defense that I want to offer for the decision to be here is is that we need to remember that, you know, our finances and our revenue is based on certain commodities, that being property value, sales tax, hotel tax, other items. And the needs of the city, and like Stephanie mentioned, you know, they're very successful with Measure O, supported us to put money towards the roads, and that money has been all allocated and will be coming to the streets soon, and you'll see those improvements. You know, I think you need to understand is that when we put money aside to pave a street like Rosedale, and then the city's going to come in and tear up, the sewer district's going to come up and tear up and put in sewers, it doesn't do us any good to pave the street knowing that it's going to be torn up 6 months later. And same with Claire's, when they tell us they're going to dig up and put in a sewer, it doesn't do any good for us to pave it. So those funds are sitting there ready to go to pave those streets. And you know, I couldn't sit up here and look you straight in the face and say, we don't have the money, we put it someplace else, we all have vacation homes in the Bahamas, because that's not the case. You're going to see those improvements, and this is where I'm speaking for the other two councilmen that are here that have been long-time members of this town, long-time contributors, volunteers of this town, is that their hearts are in the right place. The plan was for the future. I think we always need to take a step back. If it's regroup, step back and regroup, then so be it. But just remember that we will face challenges as a town. We will face economic challenges, climate challenges. More tax revenues are going to be coming to you via the Regional Transportation Commission, whether the metro system. There's a lot of systems right now that are suffering from short funds and revenue sources. So as we sit right now, fact is we have reestablished our reserves. We have a good contingent fund. I'm not saying it's all ahead full, but you know, for the time being, it's good. There are certain things, obligations that we have that are going to keep coming. So the will of the people was obvious at New Brighton. I think that going against that would be the wrong decision at this point. We are still here to serve you. We are constantly going to be looking for new sources of revenue, and that doesn't mean that we won't come back with another idea. Hopefully, if we come back with another idea, there'll be a different process and maybe one that's more appealing to the citizens of this town. So without belaboring and without giving you a history lesson, I'm just going to call for the vote. Can we have a roll call vote, please, Sue?
Councilmember Harlan?
Aye.
Councilmember Bertrand?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Botorff?
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. With that,
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we're going to move back to item B, Part B, which will be a presentation on the parking structure. Steve?
Real quick, once again, I'd like to ask Nels Westman to come up, Chairman of the Traffic and Parking Commission.
Good evening again, council members. We'll make this short. My name is Nels Westman. I am the chair of your Traffic and Parking Commission. In response to your request at your last meeting, I am checking in with you regarding the Commission's long-standing recommendation that the city build a parking structure on the existing parking lot in Upper Pacific Cove. The recent discussions about Pacific Cove have clearly highlighted that much of the data we used in our 2011 recommendation is now out of date. The Traffic and Parking Commission met last night and discussed a process to update our data and to review our 2011 recommendations to the Council. This review will include design and size parameters, costs, and financing mechanisms. Initially, we would anticipate the process to take about 6 months. This is our work plan unless the Council directs us otherwise. We can also incorporate any additional areas of study that the Council directs us to address. Thank you.
Any questions?
No. I was at the meeting, and I followed the development of this concept and fully support it.
Stephanie, any questions? Public comment on this? Anybody in the public like to weigh in on the parking structure? Seeing none, bring it back.
Like I said, I fully support the recommendation of the Parking Commission on this.
And that is to take it back, work out a process for 6 months?
Right. Sort of consistent with what you said, this is going to update the information. This is going to update our cost analysis. And the other thing I know that they're going to be working on is providing a rationale to the citizens of Capitola. Why do we need a parking structure? It's often said that the present ones that we have right now are empty. Why do we need a parking structure? Why did the merchants come to us and say we need available parking? These are important things. It was just mentioned a little while ago about one of the residents, he's standing up in the back, that economics is a real driver here. And so that's some of the information I expect coming back in 6 months or so. Thanks.
Stephanie?
No.
No other staff input as far as recommendations with any other future work from Watchery or updates, or do you think you can assist the Parking Commission with this?
I think we're going to take a look at the report, kind of tear it down and redo the demand, and then look at if we need to do any updates of that kind. I don't think at this point we know enough whether we want to spend any money to update that study or not. If we do, we will come back and address that at that point.
Do we have a second on your talk motion?
No.
There wasn't a motion, it was just a
Okay,
consensus.
I make a motion to approve this, excuse me, how should I say this? Yeah, approve the concept in the study that the Parking Commission is going to take.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. With that, we come to
Thank you,
adjournment
Nels.
to our next meeting. And thank you, citizens of Capitola, and let's move forward together. Good night.